Good evening. The National Bureau of Investigation refutes that it is subjecting Vice President Sara Duterte to harassment after the agency filed criminal cases against her. In a press conference on Thursday, February 13, NBI Director Jaime Santiago maintains that no one is above the law after former presidential spokesperson and Duterte ally Salvador Panelo tagged the complaints as mere forms of harassment.
Hindi po namin hinaharas si Vice President. Nire-respeto nga po namin siya. Kaya pinigyan namin siya ng dalawang pagkakataon para umapir dito. Ma'am, remember, no one is above the law. Kung sino nagpapaviolate ng law, kahit sino ka pa man, ay papanagutin ka namin. At ito pong kaso na ipinataw, isinampa namin labang kay Vice President. That was filed not because she is a Vice President. That was filed because she committed a crime.
Santiago says the NBI remains neutral, impartial, and apolitical, adding that the agency is only doing its job. The NBI chief also disputes Panelo's argument against the case of grave threat that there can be no crime of a threat from the grave.
Alam naman natin lahat na you cannot charge a dead person. Wala nang criminal liability ang dead person. Pero ang threat niya, sinabi niya, ngayon, nabubuhay siya. Parang makakapagsalita, patay na. Ngayon niya sinabi, so ngayon siya criminally liable.
He also defends the inciting to sedition case the NBI filed, citing Duterte's press conference where she supposedly encouraged her followers to commit disturbance and seditious acts.
Kung merong tumutos disturbance, sedisyon na. Inciting pa nga lang eh. Nag-i-incite pa lang. Nag-i-hikayat pa lang. No? Naku, mga first year student ng law, alam na alam po yan.
Meanwhile, Department of Justice spokesperson Miko Clavano says they hope Duterte will see the criminal complaints filed against her as a chance to clear her name. Clavano clarifies that the complaints filed by the NBI are still pending before the National Prosecution Service to analyze and determine whether there is a reasonable certainty of conviction. This means the complaints may either be returned to the NBI for further case buildup or proceed to a preliminary investigation which will eventually result in the filing of cases in court. The NBI on February 12 filed before the Department of Justice complaints of inciting to sedition and grave threat against the Vice President. During an online press conference in November 2024, Duterte said she instructed someone to kill President Bongbong Marcos, First Lady Liza Arneta Marcos, and House Speaker Martin Romualdez if she would be assassinated. Re-electionist Senator Bato Dela Rosa denounces President Bongbong Marcos' remarks seemingly against senatorial aspirants aligned with former President Rodrigo Duterte. In an ambush interview on Thursday, February 13, Dela Rosa, who was chief implementer of Duterte's drug war, says Marcos' remark alluding to senatorial candidates endorsed by Duterte was uncalled for.
Uncalled for, unexpected, coming from a president. So hindi namin nasahan na gano'n. Pero sige lang, tanggap lang namin yan na this is political season. We expect political basing and political everything.
In his speech at the PDP Laban's proclamation rally, Dela Rosa says he wasn't ashamed that his hands were tainted with blood of those he considered bad people.
Kung yung aking mga kamay ay may bahid ng dugo, hindi ko po yan ikinakakahiya. Kung yung aking mga kamay ngayon ay may bahid ng dugo ng mga masasamang tao, kung kinakailangan na madumihan ng dugo ng masamang tao ang aking kamay, para maprotektahan ang buhay ng mga matitino, mababait at mga law-abiding citizens, gagawin ko po yun. Itaga nyo sa bato. Gagawin ko yan.
As former head of the Philippine National Police, Dela Rosa was the chief implementer of Duterte's drug war. Marcos on February 11 said the alyansa para sa bagong Pilipinas senatorial slate was not tainted by the drug war dubbed Oplantokang and corruption during the COVID-19 pandemic. The president also said none of the senatorial candidates he is supporting are pro-Pogos and pro-China in West Philippine Sea issues. He also made an apparent swipe at the alleged sex abuse of detained Kingdom of Jesus Christ founder Apollo Kibuloy. Marcos then called on Filipinos to vote straight for Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas senatorial candidates if they do not want a return to the country's bloody past. Senatorial candidates from the administration-backed Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas defend President Bongbong Marcos' attacks against the bets of other political parties. At a press conference ahead of their proclamation rally in Iloilo City on Thursday, February 13, Alyansa's candidates were asked to comment on Marcos' remarks during their proclamation rally in Ilocos Norte on Tuesday, February 11. In his speech, Marcos said no one in the administration's slate is tainted by the bloody drug war, corruption during the COVID-19 pandemic, and links to Pogos and China. For former Senate President Tito Soto, the president was merely stating his perspective, noting Marcos was not a candidate. ACT-CIS party list representative Erwin Tulfo echoes Soto's sentiments, saying Marcos has his own ideas and opinions. Tulfo then reiterates that their team would veer away from negative campaigning and instead present their accomplishments. While the candidates vow not to attack other sides, Tulfo says they cannot dictate what the president says. Former Interior Secretary Benhur Abalos urges voters to consider the full context of Marcos' statements. He says Marcos began his speech by praising the Alyansa slate. Abalos believes that when Marcos said his candidates wouldn't side with China, it meant they stood for Philippine sovereignty. The Philippine Coast Guard finds the movement of China's fisheries research ship off Luzon suspicious. In a radio interview on Thursday, February 13, PCG spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tarriela, points out that Lanhai 101 maintained an approximate distance of 24 to 25 nautical miles while transiting near Luzon's coast. Tarriela describes the Chinese research vessel's move to maintain such distance as precise, making him wonder if they are intentionally following the coastline's contour. Tarriela notes it may be speculative of him, but with a Chinese research vessel involved, he wonders why they would move in such a way. Although Lanhai 101 told the PCG that it is just invoking the right of innocent passage, Tarriela reveals that the research vessel traveled the same distance while moving near some Luzon areas such as Palawan, Mindoro, Zambales, Pangasinan, and Ilocos. If it were just innocent passage, Tarriela questions why the Chinese vessel would make an effort to do a contour of the Luzon coastline. Tarriela reported on Wednesday, February 12, that Lanhai 101 was spotted about 62 nautical miles off Babuyan Island coastline. U.S. maritime expert Ray Powell first reported the presence of Lanhai 101 within Philippine archipelagic waters on February 10. The PCG has been monitoring the movements of Chinese vessels unlawfully operating within the country's exclusive economic zone and near Zambales since January. Beijing continues to encroach into Philippine waters despite a 2016 arbitral award dismissing its claims over most of the South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea. 3 Chinese vessels were spotted within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone during the joint patrols of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and its counterparts in Canada and the United States. In a statement on Thursday, February 13, the AFP says they spotted 3 People's Liberation Army Navy ships along with an oceanographic surveillance ship and a helicopter during the 7th Multilateral Maritime Cooperative Activity on Wednesday, February 12. According to the AFP, the monitored Chinese assets did not interfere during the joint activity. In a separate statement, the AFP says the joint patrols were held within the Northern Luzon Command Joint Operational Area. AFP reveals the Naval Forces Northern Luzon deployed the BRP Andres Bonifacio and the Beechcraft King Air to take part in the division tactics, anti-submarine warfare, and communication exercises. It adds that the Multilateral Maritime Cooperative Activity supports efforts to safeguard the West Philippine Sea and maintain a maritime domain awareness. The AFP says the activity also reflects the importance of international cooperation in ensuring peace, stability, and adherence to the 2016 arbitral ruling under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The Philippine Coast Guard has been monitoring the presence of Chinese vessels within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, even noting Beijing's patrols are growing closer to the country's shore. Beijing asserts sovereignty over the South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea, but the 2016 arbitral award effectively dismissed these claims in favor of Manila. Senator Rafi Tulfo says he is alarmed by the fact that only 10% of foreign Pogo workers have been deported, even after the lapse of the December 2024 deadline. During the hearing of the Senate Committee on Games and Amusement on Thursday, February 13, it was revealed that as of August last year, there were over 50,000 Pogo workers nationwide, of whom 30,000 were foreigners. President Bongbong Marcos ordered the Pogo ban last year, giving them until December 31, 2024 to wrap up with their operations. According to Immigration Legal Division Chief Arvin Cesar Santos, the Bureau issued visa cancellation orders to only 12,000 of 30,000 foreign Pogo workers. Pressed by Tulfo on how many of the 30,000 workers are now out of the country, Santos says the Bureau of Immigration has only deported 3,000 of them. Tulfo then questions why only 10% have been deported so far, floating the possibility that the remaining foreigners are still operating Pogos illegally.
Thank you sa PAOK, sa NBI. Pero 10%, so ibig sabihin, meron pang gumagala-gala dyan o baka nag-operate pa illegally kung ano man yung operation nila. Meron tayong 27,000 foreign nationals na dati nag-work sa Pogo at hindi nyo na-account kung nasaan po sila.
Tuloy-tuloy po yung operation ho namin starting January. The first operation after since the start of the new year, ho, Mr. Senator, is that 438 po yung na-apprehend namin.
Santos notes that the Bureau of Immigration is bolstering its operations against the remaining Pogo workers, but he cites the challenges the agency is facing.
We are continuously conducting our law enforcement operations. Although we acknowledge ho na sa volume, medyo hindi ho ganun kabilis. So medyo may challenges ho talaga in terms of logistics and from detaining them and to actual deportation ho.
And these are the stories you need to know today. I'm Neil Mercado. Follow INQUIRER.net on Facebook, X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For more stories, visit INQUIRER.net. Good evening.